Hi everybody, this is pianist Mackenzie Melemed. Welcome back to another Pianostics video. For those of you joining in for the first time, a big welcome to you. I'm a 29-year-old classical pianist. I did my training at the Juilliard School in New York City with Robert McDonald and Emmanuel Axe, and I've been teaching privately since graduating in 2020. I currently reside in Helsinki, Finland, and I recently had the idea of promoting education for classical piano, especially trying to share some of the knowledge that I've gained. It's invaluable information from fantastic teachers while studying at Juilliard. I would really appreciate it if you like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and also share with your classical piano communities as well. These 15-minute lessons, my first series, they're going to cover a wide variety of different repertoire from Bach to Chopin. We'll be discussing elements of like fingering, phrasing, articulation, how to think about the overall architecture of the piece, and hopefully there'll be something in every episode that you can apply to your own practicing to help make it more efficient, practicing smarter so you can learn more in less time, and also get right to focusing on the musical content in the score. I really appreciate you being here with me, and without further ado, let's jump into the lessons. In today's lesson, we'll be discussing Alexander Scriabin's Prelude, Opus 13, number 1 in C major. So if we start looking at the form, I'll just do a very basic idea. I'll use yellow as our first idea marker. We have these quarter notes and some rhythms here. Where does it end? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we have the next idea coming in again, but it's the same thing. We can see that this musically and this musically is the same idea. So that was 8 bars. If we skip ahead 8 bars, we end here. So this is not the same. I'm going to start with our second idea in blue, and I'll just see if it's 8 bars, and it is. We'll go to the next page. What do we have here? Just a different, we have a more expansive version of our opening theme. If we go 8 bars, yes, then we've got our second theme coming back towards the end. So pretty basic form of 2 main ideas, and when the main idea comes back and when the second idea comes back, they're a little bit more technically difficult, and they're expanded with some larger octave leaps and triplets and things like that. So that is our main form. So let's analyze the ink, and what I mean by that is looking kind of topographically down to see, can we judge what the mood of the piece is just by looking at the score? And for me, I see maestoso, and I think it's not a very fast tempo, and we have these slow moving octaves in the left hand. And that is something that inherently is a difficult thing to do. How do we move our hands slowly, but also with purpose and, with a kind of, some sort of tension, so that we can move through the section without, kind of being like a dinosaur and boom, 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 and kind of reverberating everywhere. So that is one thing I think about a lot. And in the right hand, say in the second line, we see this pattern that comes up where we've got these moving octaves. And that's going to be a little bit challenging as well, where everything is so like a stone here. Everything is in a boom, boom, boom. How do we find the movement? And so what I mean by analyzing the ink is just this. I see where the pitfalls may be. I see a very difficult section coming up here where we have this kind of the stone idea of these heavy octaves. Well, they're not heavy actually anymore. We've got the heavy chords that are repeated also in the left hand. So we're going to have to move. We're going to have to move our left hand to take over these triplets with the octaves. But how are we going to push that forward and also play these accompanimental eighth notes in the left hand? So that is my ink analysis of, yes, I'm going to probably have an issue with my main issue is moving things forward and not having things get static and stuck. There are pieces where feeling like you're stuck and playing a little bit more statically is welcome and works very, very well. And it very well may work in this prelude. But I also know that there will be times in all pieces where we need to move forward, because if we're just we're stuck, we don't have any kind of goal of where we want to get to, we don't have the end game in mind, it can be very difficult to keep your attention as well as your audience's attention through a work. This prelude just happens to be 2 minutes, so I think depending on the interpretation that you're eyeing, I think there could be obviously a possible working ability to do a more static. I think there is a definite angle for a more introverted, inner-looking interpretation. I'm going to suggest a couple of ways to find this difficulty and acknowledge that we've got these moving parts that are very slow, and we're going to move them forward, and I'll share some tips. So the first tip of what we can do to move forward through what seems like we're trudging through quicksand and something that's pulling us back a little bit just by the nature of what's written with these octaves and these chords, very slow moving. We're going to use the choreography of our hands to help us move forward kind of through the inner feeling of what we want to happen. We're going to kind of animate that into the movement of our hands, and it's not only just what kind of sound do we want to make, we have to think about how we're moving our hands between the notes, and as we get to one note, as we finish one note, where we are, whether we're sitting in the key or we're grabbing the coffee that's on the side of the piano, which should never be there. How do we really make sure that we're 100% committed to creating the musical idea that we want, and we need to therefore know 100% of the time where our hands are, how they're moving, how much tension we have in the movement of our hands. This kind of we're poaching a little bit the chords. Each one is a little bit separate. If we keep our hands a little bit closer and with our hands exhibit the movement of a little bit more connection, we get an immediately more balanced sound, and we have a more connected. Now I'm using my left hand because it's a little bit easier. I won't cover the keys. But what else am I doing besides just connecting? One thing I'm also doing is I'm making sure that the micro movements in my hands are similar, so that once I play, I'm ready, and this movement is similar. And when I can make a lot of the movements as similar as possible and do that as accurately as possible, the sound production that I'm going to make is going to be also very similar, and we're going to be living in the same mood from chord to chord. So that kind of sound, we have a melody that is more connected because the sounds are equal. The sound production is more on stable footing, and it's not only playing legato that makes the sound and the melody sound legato. It's the fact that when you speak, you have the same dynamic, you have the same sound production. Whereas if you speak differently, I'm actually not. I wasn't taking any breath there. I was actually speaking in a legato way, but the micro, movements of my dynamics were off. And so the micro movements in our hands can really give us another element of legato under the slur. And give us a melody that moves, that's buoyant, without feeling like we're blocked and that we're marking every quarter note. So that's one use of thinking about the choreography. You want to be as close to the key as possible, which works for the articulation and the idea that you want. Even when you play staccato, let's see, for example, we have, we'll go to this difficult section on the top of the second page, which is when the main theme comes back. We've got to, for my own idea for this interpretation, I want to keep very, very noble, but also stable and connected, this right hand and left hand that's repeating the melody. I don't have any extra space to do anything extra with my hands. They're grounded in the keys, and the space I need to take is very metered. And so I'm living, the way my hand moves is its own character. So you can actually see, you can judge by just looking at how my hands move without any sound. You can judge the quality of the sound and the mood of the sound. And that's something which is really important. And once you learn about the weights of your hand, how to move them, how to control the micro movements in your hand, just doing a little bit of practice every day, you'll soon be able to create a lot more characters than you ever knew you could. And it can be fine-tuned on a very, 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 on a micro level. So the last point which I want to talk about was when we, combine the different articulations here with the hand choreography, as well as how are we creating a long phrase and maintaining the tension even when we have, conflicting articulations. We have things that are, obviously just the idea that we have to play and come all the way back here. We have to make a lot of these movements that are kind of forces working against us to maintain the tension in the phrase. And so I like to obviously play hands apart, and then when I work the hands through, trying to think about the line and watching the choreography. Those two working together will be really helpful. I'll just go up to here. And then when I think about left hand, there's no point actually to practice because we're never going to be in a position where we're relaxed and ready to play these two notes, because we always have to be coming from the upper note. So it's also important to know when you practice hands alone, is it helpful to practice something, a section where you're going to be coming from all the way up here at the other end of the piano, or if you're going to play here and you have to, you have a big jump before. So be mindful of those things. When you play hands alone, you actually, have to take parts of some of the melodies, or even start a little bit earlier, so that you're really prepared, and it's a real world example of where you're going to be in a performance, that after you play this, you have to come down here. You're never going to be just waiting around to play the G octaves down there. So I'm going to play this section. Now, it sounds a little bit mushy, but for my idea, I don't think that it's possible. You can't actually play the chord unless you put the sostenuto pedal, which I don't think sounds appropriate. but we do have the slurs as well under the staccato. And I think that the moving idea is that he wanted us to use the triplets as kind of a propeller, bum, 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 to help us with this kind of circular motion as we go through the line. That was a little bit more circular, but I felt like I was doing a little bit too much. So I'm going to think a little bit more and watching that, you know, if I want to have this idea, da 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 da, in a certain point, you know, the choreography of our hands needs to match that a little bit. We can't just, you know, make that sound out of nowhere. We have to produce the sound, and we have to be, you know, diligent in watching how our hands move. We have a lot of space to cover. So let me try it with the right hand. I think it improves the way that I play it. So that idea, da 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 da, you want to be watching that and stay. You know, if it's not working out, try to, you know, take the micro pieces at a very slow tempo. But it's not partitioned. You know, all of these, if you're jerking your hand around, it's like everyone is getting their own time. Each chord or octave is getting its own, you know, separate movement, and it's a very fluid motion. So practicing that will help you not only in this piece, but in a lot of other works. And finally, you know, coming back to the idea of the form, you know, use this to see. Even though you've got hairpins and such, think about the hairpins in terms of this is in piano, because when we have a crescendo to forte, if you're, you know, already making a large leap with these, you know, small opening hairpins, you don't really have that much room to grow later on, especially when you have a couple more things. You've got piano up to the hairpins again and some crescendos and double crescendos. So keep in mind where you're going to be arriving at and plan accordingly with your dynamics. See you in the next lesson.